Mic is on mute. Well done. Well done, Paul. You know, like you haven't done that before. Jesus. Hello, how you all doing? Welcome to MYT Feedback across ADSR Sounds, across the lovely people at Magnetic Magazine, and also on the MYT YouTube channel. How you all doing? It's me, Paul James Nolan, and we are back for more track feedback goodness. And this is a bit of a special one, this one, because we've got something really, really cool happening. This is an A&R session, so this will be slightly different to what we've done previously, where we've had legends like Guy Barone, Funk Devoid, Patrice Baumel, you know, all those amazing people, and the guests that we've got coming in the future are amazing also. We're going to do it with a record label. So we are going to be joined any second now by Chris Forshaw, who is one of my oldest and dearest friends, and is also the label manager and the founder of Night Colours, which has been a really, really up and coming and really, really exciting progressive house label that's been absolutely breaking through in the last few years or so. So really, really excited to do this as we move over. And there we go. And I don't know why the music's playing. The wonders of live television. There's Chris. How you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, you all right?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm just like, you know, I'm stressing with live television here at the moment. Like, I'm normally much more smooth. I don't know what's going on with me today, but you know, it is what it
I'm a
is.
bit disappointed I wasn't classed in the legends section there at the start.
Well, you know, you will be by the end of it, mate. Do you know what I mean? Because you know, you're the legend that, like, a bit like me, you lurk in the background and kind of like put everybody else over. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's all good. So how are you, mate? You everything fine with you? Everything good with the label?
Yeah, it's going well at the moment. I have to say the last year or so has been really good. Lots of tracks that have done really well, lots of DJ support. It's just going in the right direction, really. It's been a really good 18 months or so for the label.
Yeah, it really has. It really has. I mean, I've noticed it because obviously the label's been going for quite some time, hasn't it? And then, like, I find this with a lot of record labels where you tend to kind of like not bob along, but you kind of tend to get into a bit of a groove. And then at some point at the development of a label, it tends to just take an upward trajectory. You know, you get one or two really good records under your belt with like really good DJ support, and then all of a sudden it's off to the races. And that's definitely something that's happened with Night Colours in the last year and a half, like you say, and it's definitely grown a lot. The label, I've seen it myself.
Yeah, I think so. I think it started off in a little bit of a different place, to be honest. It started off not as I'm going to say big room focused or like big track focused, and then as you say, really, we just sort of found our groove with it, and found records that worked for everyone really.
Mm.
And once you get that support, and once things start to go well, more people want to get involved,
Yeah.
and it just sort of snowballs from there then, like you say, really. And you get on this trajectory which changes everything really.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, there's no Ferraris or anything like that yet, but it's it's certainly better.
Yeah, yeah, sure, sure. I understand that, mate. There's no Ferraris knocking around for me either, to be honest with you, apart from like the little Matchbox ones that I've got on my table over here. Do you know what I mean? Or the ones on my PlayStation when I'm playing Gran Turismo. That's about as close as I'll ever come, to be honest with you. But you know, it is what it is. So yeah, so great stuff. So as we were saying, you know, all of these tracks are unsigned. So I wanted
Yeah.
to do sessions like this with labels, like, and you're the first amongst them. In fact, you were the first person I thought of when I came up with the idea of doing these types of sessions. And, you know, we're going to do a few of these with like different labels. You know, we've got Brent, who I just did the track Ethereal Pulse with. That's
Yeah.
got the Hernan Cataneo remix that's coming out on the 9th of May. Shameless plug, but you know, it's my session, so I can do whatever I want. You know, he's going to come and do a Probitech one as well. So every now and then, when we bring legends in, like yourself, just to, you know, there you go, there you go. We're happy now. We're happy now. The ego's been stroked. Uh, we're gonna actually like punctuate having those amazing artists come in, like, you know, we've mentioned like Guy Barone before and Funk Devoid and everything, and we're going to bring in like some labels. So the whole point is to actually help people get signed in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's basically what we do at MYT. I mean, you know yourself, because you are technically like an MYT alumni yourself. Do you know what I mean? Because like obviously we worked in the studio on and off for a while as well over the years. So you're very familiar with what we do and, you know, how we try and help artists move into full-time careers. So eventually, hopefully there is a Ferrari and not just a Matchbox one, but you know, you see where you're going. So yeah, very, very cool. So yeah, we're gonna get straight into it. So we've got 11 tracks, and we've got 5 from our current community of MYTs. And you know, as you know, Chris, like the standard from those guys is incredibly high because they're subject to our artist development program. And then we've got some really, really great ones from outside as well, because we like to try and like mix it up with everyone. So very, very cool indeed. So we're going to start with one from the community, and we're going to go with Ariel Gray. Now, Ariel is somebody who we're quite excited about. Reason being is he did an EP on our label. So we also have a label called Emergent Properties, which we launched because of the high quality of people in the community. And his EP last year performed really well, and it got a huge amount of support from Elkie Klein. So, you know, he's got good chops and he's got a really, really high level. So I'm excited to get your opinion on this, but this is a brand new one from him called The Craft. So we're going to get straight into it, and we're going to hit play and bring that in. Here we go. there you go. There was Mr. Ariel Gray. And first of all, we just had a bit of a technical issue on the stream. For some reason, you were getting two versions of that at the same time and not very well mixed, apparently. there was some bad beat matching going on, apparently. And it was down to our live streaming software gathering the audio from Zoom and from Logic at the same time for some reason. Like, why would it do that? I don't even know. But unfortunately, that sort of compromised the listening experience for people on the stream. So thanks for bearing with us. That will not happen again. I do absolutely guarantee that I can beat match. It is an established fact that I can actually beat match, just not on a live stream. So there you go. So yeah, at the same time, I'm like, Chris is having a really good deep listen to this. I don't want to stop things to actually, like, you know, that kind of thing. So how do you enjoy that, mate? Mm. 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 Yeah.
It's like a mood setter, isn't it, of a track, and then
Yeah.
it goes off at the end. So you've got to be careful that it doesn't get boring, and lose it. It's got to keep, that sort of momentum going. And I
Yeah.
just felt in that in that middle section,
Yeah.
I know that there's variation in it, but it just felt like it
Mm.
dragged a bit there
Yeah.
because the rest of the track is really good.
Yeah.
It is a really good track.
hmm
Yeah, really
No,
liked
no,
it.
absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there's I think there is a case for, like, you know, applying what we like to call the Patrice Baumel rule of one of everything, where, like, essentially you could strip that section back quite a bit, and, you know, rather than having, like, say for example, like two really long breakdowns, you could have like one really really functional one that does the trick for the entire track,
Yeah,
and then it kind of cuts it down a little bit. Do you know what I mean? Because it may well be that, you know, if, and again, like, another aspect of it is you could cut down that middle section by, like, say, you know, 45 seconds. You've then got a really good, super tight, functional 6.5 minute record that
yeah,
really gets in, does the damage, and then gets out. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
But like,
And
I
just,
so go after you, mate.
just keep that energy flowing through it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Because I think there is definitely an aspect of, like, not that he didn't know where he was going with it. Because, like, this is like a mastered record, like, and you know,
yeah,
he's ready to send it out. So there may well be a case for even doing like this is like an extended mix, and then making those little alterations that we were talking about into, like, what you call like a club mix.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? So it kind of, or like a dub mix, like a dubbier version of it that really sort of hits home. But
yeah.
I really believe in this guy. Like, I think he's got a really, really big future ahead of him because, like, you listen to the EP that we put out on the label last year. We've got another EP coming out with him in, like, I think June. I think May, end of, and maybe even end of next month, into June, July, something like that on the release schedule. And, you know, he's getting big support from the likes of Elkie and stuff. So, you know, he was one of the prime candidates of, like, wanting to get him in front of another
Yeah.
label today. Do you know what I mean? So really, really glad
No,
that you're into
definitely.
it.
It's really good. Yeah, it is a really good track. Yeah. I
hmm
mean, it sounds like it's a release ready track, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much, pretty
Yeah.
much. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, pretty damn cool, pretty cool. All right then, so we have that as the first exposure. So we're gonna move to the opposite end of the old metric AB here, and we're gonna go to what we call the Cyberlights. This is Fordle. This is somebody I know quite well, Les Dales. He's just had a release doing really well on Plastic Fantastic, I believe. Um, Yeah, art pleasure. Yeah, art pleasure, and he's. I didn't realize this until I spoke to him the other day when he said he wanted to put this in. That he's actually now the co-owner of Forensic, which is obviously a legendary label. So very very cool. So yeah, he wanted to put this in, and here we go. So shall we just let rip and see where we go? Cool. there was Fordle with the cyber lights. I think very aptly titled, given the quite Blade Runner-y pads there.
This, I think, if keeps the energy really well throughout the sections. This is sort of like what I was talking about with the first one. In the sort of sections with the kick drum in this, it always keeps the energy going. It's really good. It's like really quite funky, isn't it, as well? It's the like sort of mix of like the sort of houseier end of the prog world. The only thing I would say again, because this is again another really good track, it's a little bit too long for me. I mean, the big break is, I think, a bit too long, and so's probably the first break. I think that's 8 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah, with the
For
outro and everything,
me,
yeah.
if someone sends me a track at 8 minutes, I'm always probably going to say this needs to be at least a minute shorter. Um, it just, it's just a long time. I mean, unless it's like some kind of mega like prog record of old.
Like magnum opus, like.
Yeah, it to me it's just too long. I mean, I think the it's not efficient. Maybe that's a way of saying that. We could probably do more with in a short space of time. But saying that, the track is really good. I really like a lot of the elements and sounds in this and the melodies. It's really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, it's great that you looked at it from like an arrangement perspective, and also from the perspective that you have, right, which is a label manager, which is like, this is what I'm looking for, this is what we found in the market works, because
yeah,
a lot of people do, unfortunately, do prejudge records based on their duration. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
And it is a fact that I say this is a complete hypocrite. Like, I write 10-minute records all the fucking time. Do you know what I mean? But it is a fact that, like, people's attention spans are just that little bit shorter these days, and it tends to be like you have to do sort of condense things a little bit. So I totally agree with you on that. On the technical side of things, I found the low end to be quite strange, if I'm being honest, in a couple of different ways. It felt like before the first break and in the intro, the low end was like kind of doing one thing, and then after the drop, it kind of did something else. Like, it didn't quite feel as heavy. And there seems to be like a bit of a tonal change. And just throughout as well, I felt like the low end lacked a little bit of clarity and a little bit of tightness. And that can be through a number of different things. That can be through a lot of stereo information in the bass. It can be just down to the relationship generally between the kick and the bass. And for me, one of the things that really stood out was that, for me, I think the kick drums are too high pitch for the bass. And I know, like, a lot of these sort of more housey records, they tend to go slightly higher in terms of the pitch of the kick drum in order to try and get that sort of more, I don't know, slightly techy, slightly more bouncy feel. But for me, I feel like the fundamental foundation of the low end is kind of a bit off. So I think one of the things I would recommend is to try and take that kick drum and maybe detune it downwards by a couple of semitones to get it to sit with the low end a little bit more. And then things might actually lock into place. Look at the stereo information in the bass, and I mean, there is like this looks fairly good here, if I'm being honest with you, in general, but there might still be little bits, like, I always say 300's my sort of like your number for mono and everything down, because despite what everybody might say these days, you do still have to mono your low end because of club sound systems and Bluetooth speakers and a number of different things. So you have to really bear that in mind. So that's the main thing for me. And it's like, it just felt like there's a thickness and a heaviness in the low end that isn't quite helping propel the track forward, which is a bit of a shame because the groove's really good, like you mentioned, Chris. And then when you get into the pads, because the low end's so prevalent and so sort of like slightly not muddy, but slightly like less than defined, those Blade Runner style pads coming over the top and they're too loud. And really, what you want them to do is kind of like you want them to soar over the top of the drums, but you don't want them to over dominate. And there's like a little bit too much mid range. There's not enough reverb, sort of high end, kind of like, high mids going on there. So, therefore, because one of the fundamental elements is out of balance, you push another element over the top of it to try and basically like make up for it, to try and compensate for it. And then you'd end up with quite a kind of a non-focused kind of mix, which is a real shame, because I think this record, along with what Chris is saying in terms of shortening it down from 8 minutes to like 7 minutes, 6 minutes 45, what happens there is you can make that, because if you look at the actual waveform, the outro section's like really long. And yeah, okay, DJ friendliness and everything else, great, but you could literally get rid of like a minute just from that outro. Or you could get rid of, like, say, for example, 16 bars from the outro and then 16 bars from the middle section. And what that has the capacity to do is make the whole track a minute shorter. And then it brings all the dramatic sections a little bit closer together. So you get it into a ballpark of it getting in, saying what it's got to say, and getting out and not outstaying its welcome too long. And therefore, it also, again, taking Chris's perspective as a label manager into consideration, you're not triggering that thing of like, oof, 8 minutes a bit long. Do you know what I mean? So you've kind of got to get the balance right on that. But and again, I think with a little bit more work and a little bit more finesse, especially when it comes to things like the mix down and getting that low end right. I see this countless times with the artists that I coach on MYT, that once you get the low end right and that locks into place, and it's normally one element that does it, everything else falls into place. This feels like a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle that's kind of got a few pieces in the wrong way and kind of not quite fitting together at the moment. But the good news for Les is that they're not massive changes. We're not actually telling them to like rip the track apart. It's just a little bit more finesse and a little bit more control. I think we'll get this to the next level quite simply. So yeah, brilliant. Really, really good, but a really good strong start to the session, like really great tracks. So definitely. Yeah, very cool. So we're going to alternate. We're going to move back to the MYT community on the next one now. And this is going to be Musk, who has been putting some really, really amazing effort in recently. He's got a proper arsenal of tracks ready to go. So let's see what Chris thinks of this. Here we go. There you go, there was Musk with a bit of a deeper one there. What are you thinking, mate?
So this one I really like, and the reason I really like this one is because it is original. It's completely original. It's got like it's not normally the kind of stuff that someone would send me. It's got, as you say, it's deep. It's got almost like a techno sound to it, hasn't it? Some of the sounds he's used on it, yeah, it is a hit, isn't it? It's really good, especially after the break. There's like in the low end, it changes, doesn't it, after the break, and it's really effective. It's really good. My only sort of, I don't know, feedback is perhaps in the break there, in the big break, that sort of melody that comes in there, could you bring that in the section before it, maybe subtly? I don't know.
More foreshadow it, maybe tease it in just a little
Yeah,
tiny
tease it
bit.
in a little bit more, give that section, like a bit more tension and then interest going into that. I don't know, but no, on it really, that's really good. Yeah, really like that.
Yeah. What have I told you? He's got another 20 just like these. Because he actually has. He actually has.
Okay, great.
Like,
Yeah.
this guy's got an arsenal of weapons that he's been working very, very, very diligently to get ready. And I'm be honest with you, I'm very proud of this guy. Like, he's really like taken the mantle, and he's worked really, really hard on like every department, whether it's like creatively, he's taken feedback on board, and he's just worked, and like he's literally just put himself through hell of like mix down and mastering and doing sessions with me, and me teaching him how to do mix downs and stuff like that. And he's really, really nailing it. So this is why I wanted to kind of, expose him to you, because he's at the point now where he's like, right, I've got to get these signed basically, and I've got to start getting these out there. Do you know what I mean? So, from a technical point of view, like I don't really have a lot to say on it, because I think it's really, really good. I think it's like, again, it's release ready. The only little bit of feedback that, as you said, is like maybe just a little bit of foreshadowing, and it could be as simple as like, having like a reverb tail of the actual melody itself, not the actual melody. You could actually set that up so you could like resample just a big reverb of it, triggering the reverb and just having that sort of float over the top just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just so, again, it's like you're not playing your cards, because I actually quite like how it saves. Like there's a discipline in like how he saves like the main riff for the break. But like you
Yeah,
say, there's a way of like kind of kind of tickling people's taste buds, if you will, to
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
get them ready for it. Which, and this is what I love about the feedback you've given about that section. It gives that section more tension, but the word I would use is purpose. It's not
yeah,
just an interim section to get you from one break to another. It's like from the second it drops, in that first drop, you're starting to prepare the ground for what's to come. So I
yeah,
actually really, really like that, and that would be something like fairly simple that he could go back and do if he wants to, and be able
yeah,
to like not compromise his mix or his master too much as well. Do you know what
yeah,
I mean? So
yeah,
yeah, I'm I'm
definitely.
I'm really excited by this guy. I really, really am. Like he's got so much talent, and he kind of runs the gamut of like the whole spectrum of stuff, like deeper stuff like this, all the way right up to like very sort of Eric Prydz style, almost like with
Okay.
a little bit of Sid D in there, that kind of thing. Very
Yeah,
in that Christoph ballpark as well. He's in
yeah,
that kind of spectrum of prog, so to speak. So yeah, really, really pleased that you've taken a liking to that, mate.
yeah. It's got, and it's the kind of thing that a whole spectrum of DJs will play, not just your obvious ones.
Hmm.
And yeah, and that's a big compliment because everyone is, when you open an inbox for a record label, it's pretty much stacked with records they think Hernan would play or Sasha would play. They're trying to make records for a DJ.
Yeah, yeah. I call that congas for Hernan.
Yeah,
Basically, it's like Hernan likes congas. Stick a conga in it, lad. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing, and it gets a little bit unfortunate because, like, and I've seen that a lot. And again, like, I don't mean this to be like disrespectful to anyone, but there's like a lot of it going on in this part of the world in South America. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of people, and I think it's the same in dance music in general, that are generally
yeah,
just kind of like making slightly different versions of just the same track over and over. And it's
yeah.
like, okay, like I did a friend of mine did get some feedback from a very big DJ a few weeks ago. Everyone should remain nameless, and it was like and the feedback went along the lines of like there's 100 people doing this, and you could swap any of them out and it'd sound the same.
Wow.
Like brutal, but it's like you've got,
Yeah,
and the end of the feedback was you've got to find your own sound. You have to.
yeah,
Like there's no, and I keep saying this to people, there's nobody better at being you than you.
yeah,
And that's actually the only job available, so you might as well accept the vacancy, you know? So you've got to find what it is that makes you tick. And that's kind of what we've done with, again, Ariel, who we played here at the beginning, with Sean. Like, I'm not teaching people on MYT to try and like be cookie cutter versions. Again, it's like it's not a production line of like, congas for hen, and it's like we're trying to get people to be themselves and to be the best version they can be of themselves, so they can be the best
yeah,
artist they can be. Like that's the only way, really. That's the only way I've ever had any success, and that's how anyone really, that anyone will tell you the same thing. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Excellent. Right, we're gonna move on. This is Ivan Lozano. Wasn't he a footballer? Like that
yeah.
name's really, really like he was like did he play for Mexico or something like that?
No idea.
Oh, just like I saw the name of Van Lozano before, and I'm like, that name really rings a bell for some reason. I'm sure he played for Mexico in like World Cup '94 or something like that. Do you know what I mean? But anyway,
Real betting.
no, yeah, exactly, mate. Yeah, exactly. Hey, we've got a bit of a superstar in the chat here. Hello to Mr. Maze 28. I'm a big fan of yours. There you
Ah,
go.
hello, Mario.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. This every month we seem to have a slightly different legend or star in the chat. Like in the past, I was actually reviewing a Tim Green masterclass that he did for us about 5 years ago, and it was basically half the masterclass was Sebastian Ledger in the comments trying to derail the whole thing, basically. And like every month we get like a Guy Barone in the comments, like with Patrice and stuff, and Mace 28 today. So Mate, Mario, if you're going to do the same journey as everyone else, Guy ended up doing one of these sessions, so you're welcome to be a guest anytime. So, don't be thinking you can land in the comments for free. You'll have to turn up and do a shift. So anyway, right, we're going to go to Ivan Lozano, whether or not he was a former footballer. And here we go with I Keep Searching. Whether he was a legendary Mexican striker or not, he certainly knows how to make a record. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, this is pretty much full on from the minute it starts, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a big room track for sure. It's yeah. What can I say? It's good at what it does, isn't it? It's solid. The drums are really good in it. The vocal isn't to my taste, but it works really well with this record. The drop's really good. I mean, there's enough interest all the way through because really, it's just full on all the way through, and it doesn't really get boring or anything like that. It keeps interest, keeps energy. It's pretty good, really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's pretty on the nose, for that like South American prog
yeah,
sound. Like it's definitely like a
yeah,
very, very high quality example of that for sure.
yeah,
I
definitely.
agree with you on the vocal is not quite to my taste either. But again, that's like a subjective thing,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, sure.
you're the arty one. I'm the technical, like sort of supposedly impartial technical guide here. You know what I mean? Like I'm trying to take my emotion out of it, which is very difficult. For me, the feedback is all technical, and yeah,
Yeah,
you're right. It is full on right from the off. For me, and this is from a technical standpoint, not from an arrangement perspective, not from a musicality perspective, although what I'm about to impart is going to help quite a lot. The master's far too loud. And it's in that you probably saw before when I went into the dynamic section on Metric AB, and it was in the squashed area, and you never want to be in that area. The absolute maximum you want any peak part of your track to hit on the master is -8 LUFS, and this on average the entire track is -7.5 on average. So this for me, and that again, if you want like a loudness reference, -8 is considered to be a loud master. Do you know what I mean? And we're in like really loud master territory. Do you know what I mean? We're not quite at Metallica Death Magnetic just yet, but we're not far off, right? So the thing with that is it's denied, it's powerful, it's a really powerful track. But if it took one step back in terms of loudness, what would happen is that the track would actually get even more powerful because there's more room, there's more dynamic range to be had. So again, the dynamics showed squashed, and you don't really want to be anywhere more than 7 on this PSR scale here. This is that competitive. The line's at 9. This area here was literally when I switched it on just before the drop, and then as it dropped, it just cascaded down. So what we're actually looking at here is there's only 6 dBs worth of difference between the loudest and the quietest part of the track, which over the long term of a track can really fatigue the ear, and it can really fatigue the dance floor. And Patrice Baumel is an absolute guru on these types of things because he talks a lot. And if you go back and watch his track feedback session from last October, last September it was, he spoke at length about how sound systems in clubs really work because he's on the front line 2-3 times a week playing long sets. He knows dynamically what works on sound systems and what doesn't. In its current state, this track would actually struggle to really cut through on a dance floor. Reason being is because there's not enough space between the beats and the loudness overall of the lack of dynamic range. So what happens if you can imagine a speaker cone, when you've got a loudness like this and a lack of dynamic range, your speaker cone is basically stuck sticking out the entire time. Whereas if there's more room and there's more dynamic range, the speaker cones in club systems can actually move more naturally and there's more space between the beats. And if there's more space and there's more dynamic range, the track invites you onto the dance floor. I've heard tracks like this played on club systems and they have a habit of actually physically almost pushing people off the dance floor. And there's a number of creative reasons why you'll want to correct this as well. because, as you mentioned before about the vocal, Chris, the vocal's struggling to cut through because there's not enough room in between everything in order to make the vocal really float over the top. And I think the vocal might actually be a little bit more to my taste if it could actually sit on top of the track properly. But because of the way that it's been mixed and mastered, it actually can't sit on top of the track. It's being slightly overwhelmed and it's kind of fighting to try and get over the top of the track, which is an amazing track. Again, this is not a judgment of the musicality. In fact, this is where the art and the science meet. This is where you use the technique and you use the theoretical understanding and the audio engineering in order to make the art get its point across. So what I would encourage Ivan to do is just take a little step back on loudness, get back into that -8 LUFS sort of area and let the track breathe. Let the beats breathe. And it can be a full-on track, but it can be a little bit quieter overall, which will get better performance. Now, a lot of people know I'm a mastering engineer, and my masters are, on balance, ever so slightly quieter than what people want. But when they play them out, they're more dynamic and they do more damage on dance floors, because guess what? There's a gain pot at the top of the DJ mixer. Just turn it up to 1 o'clock. And then you're golden. You're absolutely fine. So sometimes we need to take a little step back in order to take 2 forward. This is a very, very good example of this. Finally, as well, my pet subject, bass mono compatibility. This has a lot of stereo information in the bass. And again, what I would do is put something like a mono maker, from Brainworks, for example. BX Control is excellent. I would set everything from 300 Hertz down to be completely mono, because then you've got a strong fundamental underpinning of your low end that will work on club systems no matter whether or not they're stereo or mono. The vast majority of them still tend to be mono, and especially when you get to the bigger festival stages, and you say, for example, you look at where Hanan plays here, 10, 15,000 people. Those sound systems are not stereo. They're too big. And I know because I work for the sound system company that makes a lot of those systems, D&B Audio. They're just too big to be stereo, to be useful in that regard. So you have to mono your bass. You have to. So, and again, everything from 300 down will nail that. And that will also help, because if you actually played this in a club, it would actually possibly have some phase issues with your bass, so you'd get some phase cancellation, and then that means there's less low end, less dynamic. It then becomes a bit of a challenge in listening in the club. And I know, because I've made all of these mistakes myself over the years. I've played my own tracks in clubs that I've mastered this way and gone, oh, why does this sound terrible, and where's my bass gone? So these are all like tips and bits of feedback I'd give based on experience. But again, this is where good mixing and good mastering can really, really compromise a very good record. And I've seen incredibly good mixers and masters elevate, quite frankly, mediocre records. It can add or take away 20 to 30% of your final product. So, okay, there's the feedback. Sorry, did I go on a bit of a rant there? Sorry about that. So it's all very important stuff for everybody watching, that you get this right. And again, it's great to educate yourselves on stuff like that. I would highly recommend, if you're learning about this, I would highly recommend sending your stuff to a mastering engineer, sending your tracks to a mix engineer to hear what they do with them. So then you can pick up tips if you are one of those types of artists who eventually want to actually write, mix and master their own music that they're writing. So there you go. Excellent. Right. Next, back to the MYT community, we have Max Benini here. And this track is called Hydra. So here we go. Bit of a Sid SD vibe on that one, mate.
Yeah, actually, when it first started, I thought this is going to sound a little bit like Underworld. That's what
Ah,
I got that sort of vibe from it. I really like this. Again, though, it's too long.
right.
It because it's like a one idea track, isn't it? It's really well executed,
Hmm.
but it doesn't need. You can tell when you quiet it down there. I think there was still like a minute and 50 seconds still to go.
Yeah, yeah.
We can with a track like this, like I think you said before, you get in and out, and
Mm,
that's perfect for a track like this. It's full on, isn't it?
mm.
It's a real banger. It's a great track, but it's an in and out track.
It's
It's
v-
not a track that needs to take you on a journey.
yeah,
It's not taking you on a journey, is it? It's
yeah.
taking you to copy paste.
It's taking you to the destination, and that's it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I
yeah.
mean?
You're getting off after this
Yeah, yeah,
one.
exactly, mate. Yeah, last stop, last stop.
Yeah, exactly.
don't
Yeah,
don't fall asleep in
yeah.
the carriage while it's stationary at the station before you go back where you came from. One of those
Yeah,
ones.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a banger, isn't it? It's really good. I like he keeps it interesting with lots of little variations
Hmm.
and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
The drop's really good. Yeah, it's nice. I actually really like the start.
Hmm.
Those first couple of minutes
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
it's quite. I know nothing really seems to be happening, but actually
Hmm.
it is happening. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. I would class this as extremely DJ friendly.
Yeah,
Like it is for
yeah,
the long transitions. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
yeah, you got plenty of length either side. So yeah, again, it's interesting, isn't it? Because like we're getting this is why, again, this is one of the reasons why I asked you to do this, because you're coming at it from that label manager's perspective. Do you know what I mean? Rather than with the auteurs and the very worthy artists that we've had on previously. Do you know what I mean? Like you're looking at it from a
yeah,
completely different perspective, so it's incredibly useful feedback to be had. You know, so again, it's actually incredibly simple to just like cut the intro and the outro down a little bit, and
yeah,
you could almost keep the rest of it as is and
yeah.
just
I would say so.
let it yeah just again just turn it again into one of those get in get out type sorts of situations. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, again, Max is another one I'm really excited about. Yeah, we've got a whole bunch of them at the moment that are kind of like all maturing at the same time, like Sean, Musk, Ariel, who you heard earlier,
yeah,
all the people we've got coming on the label as well. So it's just great. It's really exciting that we've kind of got like an entire class of people sort of like emerging at the same time, so to speak. But yeah, I really love this because it's like you say, it's straight to the point. It's kept
yeah,
interesting all the way through. There's absolutely no confusion about what it is or what it's there to do. Do you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
just there to take your
Exactly.
head off, and that's it. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
and again, he's another one who's like in that sort of sweet spot in between, I would say, like two or three different genres of like that Sid SD slightly off towards techno, that Christophy type sound, and then something really progressive as well. So
yeah.
if you're mixing in the middle of that Venn diagram, it means your addressable market's much wider.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean? And there's going to be
Yeah,
range as well, because like one of the things that I
yeah,
really love with working with artists like these guys is to encourage them to have a bit of range. So there's like what you heard from Sean Musk before. That's one of his deeper cuts, and it's like you've got a bit of a spectrum of like different styles and different kinds of energy levels that they play to as well. So
yeah.
yeah, brilliant stuff. So yeah, good. More excellent feedback there. So yeah, great stuff. Okay, Alan Schultz, who I don't think is a famous German striker, by the way, just to say.
Yeah.
I'm not going to start like relating everybody's names to like alleged former footballers, but we're gonna have a listen to this. So this is called Always. So here we go. bit more of a groove of that one, mate.
Yeah, so this is good. I know Alan Schultz actually. He's a good producer. He's a very solid producer. I feel like there's a bit all the way through. I was thinking, oh, this could do with like a bit of emotion in it, and then it comes in that final drop.
Yeah.
There's a bit there. I just feel like that in that bigger. There's quite a big drop in the middle, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe there you could have a little bit more something emotion. Not, it doesn't have to be major or like over the top, but just a little teaser of emotion there because it's really nice, isn't it? It grooves all the way through. It's a kind of thing that you can imagine Herman playing. It's got that sort of vibe. Yeah, I mean it's really good.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you because what I was feeling like it was missing was like a little bit of a hook.
Yeah.
Just a little motif, like nothing too grand or too, melodramatic. Just a nice little, even like a little 3-note ostinato or something, just to add that extra little bit of flavour, like you say, that extra little bit of emotion. And I always like to talk about tracks as, in the context of storytelling. And I feel like this definitely like took you on the journey, but then when it kind of got to the destination, like in that final sort of break and drop where the pads came in and everything, it's like it didn't like offer enough of a destination for me. Do you know what I mean? Like,
exactly.
It's just you need to like bring that to a crescendo, and it doesn't even need to be anything too like incredible or like mind blowing. It just needs to be a few little notes just to give people an understanding of that's where we've been heading towards for the last 4 or 5 minutes. Basically, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would actually say that this type of track is like, and I totally agree with that. I could actually hear someone like a Hernan playing this, and I could hear him playing it like earlier in his like longer sets. Like he's going to play next weekend. Here he's going to do 2 days of 2 7-hour sets, like across on 2 days, like 7 hours day one, 14 hours total. He's going to play, and he will play this like early on to kind of get the groove going. And to kind of it's a gear shifter, from the lighter stuff into something a bit harder. So you just need that extra little frisson of like emotion and tension and musicality to not just like give this a destination, but to also foreshadow what's to come in the context of a wider set. If Alan does that, and technically I think the track's great, I think it sounds great. I really do. I think it's nice, it's dynamic, it grooves a lot. On a technical and on a mixdown perspective, I don't really have a lot to say. It's more like I say, if you get that emotion right, and this becomes one of these, like I call them like a Swiss Army knife record, where it can work no matter where you play it in a lot of different contexts. And this is the type of record like I always pull out and I'll be playing for like a year, because it just does the job in a number of different circumstances, but only if it's got that extra little bit of emotion attached to it. You know what I mean? And I think that would actually take him into a trajectory, like similar. I tell you who does this really well is Guy J. Just that little, Salt Bay of emotion, sprinkled on the top. That'll just get it to the next level. That's all it needs.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but amazing stuff, Alan. Really, really cool.
Yeah, really good.
Really cool. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go to another one of our MYTs, a special guest, Jonas from Copenhagen in Denmark. And we're going to have a little listen to this, and it's called Code Echo. So here we go. Well, there's an interesting one for you, mate. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you can really vary that somehow, I don't know whether you could either if through effects or either just every now and again a different note at the end or a
Mm.
slightly different variation of it or maybe reverse it or something
Yeah.
because I think with a riff like that it it can almost use itself up by the end of the track
Yeah.
and it becomes quite tiring, like
Yeah.
sort of on the ear really. So you always know what's coming with that sound. Whereas there's subtle things you can do, isn't there? A different note, like a third or something, or a fifth, or whatever, that will completely change it and
Mm.
be like, whoa, and it adds a whole different sort of dimension to a track, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. So yeah, like you were saying, it's not like what you would call like your taste for the label
No,
is basically what you're saying. So yeah, so fair enough on that. And like because there's quite a lot of like layers going on as well.
yeah.
And one of the things we've been working on with Jonas over the last year or so is like really like getting to like a real clear, simple like set of sounds that really cut through and it's definitely doing that for me. I mean, where I think he sits is like he's kind of like on that borderline again between like something progressive and something that's a bit more melodic techno. if you know what I mean. Like, I would, he knows this already, but I would liken him similar to artists like, say, for example, Jonas Salbach and like labels like Radicon. I think
Radicon, definitely
would be like a really good fit for him, and I think he's already on with that at the moment. But yeah, like I say, it's true. Like, you may need like a little tiny bit more variation in the riffs, so it doesn't again like outlast its welcome a little bit, and it starts to get a bit fatiguing and a bit boring. I also just found in the final third, because obviously I've heard this before, but like, this is like the latest version that I've heard. There was like a couple of sounds in the final third, and I'm like, not really sure you need to use that in the final third in terms of like, throwing the kitchen sink and everything. There was like that sound that comes in that pause before the drop, that whoa 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 whoa.
Yeah.
Like, it was coming in again later on in the final third, and I felt like it was kind of getting in the way of the other sounds a little bit. And maybe what needs to happen is that kind of like one time only event kind of approach, where it's like you only hear that sound in that area of the track, because that's like the thing that differentiates that section, and also the track from other tracks, because there's a discipline. I've always said this, there's a discipline in using sounds like that only the one time. Do you know what I mean? So like a little bit of like tidying up, a little bit of like variation in like the main melodic riffs, and I think that this is ready as well. And this isn't mixed either, because like Jonas, basically I mix the tracks for Jonas as well, you see. So it's something I offer to the MYT members as well, as that I'll mix and master the tracks for them as well, to get them into the right ballpark.
I think the sound of it, it's not me. I think the sound of it is pretty great, really.
Yeah, it's really good.
I think it is. Yeah.
So great. I mean, this is what happens, and it's again, it's very refreshing to have somebody like Chris on these calls, because like, I love the fact that you use the word taste in relation to the label, because that's basically what you run a label for, isn't it? It's an expression of your taste as a as a fan of electronic music and somebody who runs a label. So I think it's really good stuff for people to hear. Like, it's probably stuff you sort of talk about all the time and you don't think it's really valuable, but then when people actually hear you say it on something like this, you realize like the true value of your perspective.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, you are a legend, Right. Okay, here we go. So we're going to go back over here, and we're going to go to this track by Estanisl Marconi. What a name that is. That's a beautiful name. Wonder whether he was a former striker for the Faroe Islands or San Marino or something like that. I'm just going to ring the West Brom back in the day. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. Okay. So here is Fake Memories. Here we go. Absolute beauty, that, mate.
Yeah, belter. I liked it from start to finish, really. I think everything just works perfectly. The melody on that, like sort of like little, is it guitar or something?
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. The
Yeah.
bass line is excellent. It's like got so much like changing, hasn't it? Through like modulation, do we say?
Mm-hmm.
Just change all the way. It's great, really good.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really anything else to say, is there? It's great. It's summer in what, 6 minutes?
Yeah. Oh, that's the tagline, isn't it? Summer in six
Yeah,
minutes. Love it. Love
yeah,
it. No, I
it's
really,
really
really
good.
like this. This transported me like ahead of time and back in time at the same time because
Yeah,
it was like if I closed my eyes, I was back in Mendoza in December listening to Hanan in the mountains, bang in the middle of wine country, playing for like 6 hours, and he was playing this sort of stuff first couple of hours. Do you know what I mean? So like this has got Hanan written all over it. I wouldn't be surprised if
yeah,
he heard it. He'd probably play it next week. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like just a
It's
phenomenal,
really,
phenomenal record. Very delicate. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
like loads, like what we were saying before with the other tracks, like this has got loads of emotion. Like the bass line
yeah,
on its own is really emotional, and then the sum of the parts, what Estanislav's done really well here is get all those really beautifully musical parts to all talk to each other. So there's
yeah,
like a lovely conversation going on between all the parts. My only little bit of feedback is like I just feel like you could have made slightly more of the break and the build and the drop. It could go if you wanted to. You could go another leg in terms of like higher in terms of tension if you wanted to. Just a
yeah,
little tiny bit more build and maybe just in that little pause before it drops, just a little drum fill, just a little brum, something like that could just like really help set it off on the next stage of its journey. Do you know what I mean? But again, both of those are entirely subjective pieces of feedback based on what we were talking about before, which is taste at the end of the day.
yeah,
So, your mileage might vary, take it or leave it. But no, it's a phenomenal record. It really is. It's really beautiful. It's a real contender,
yeah.
that. Real contender.
Yeah, really well done. The one thing I really like about that bass, like he's really timed where he changes it and gets that little bit of emotion in it.
Hmm.
He's really timed it well.
Yeah.
It's like a break, isn't it? Really, that
Yeah.
like it's back to the groove again.
Yeah.
Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
really
good.
good.
Like, it's a masterclass in holding back,
Yeah,
which a lot of really great electronic music like this actually is. Like, it's that holding back to the last possible moment before you like sort of release the tension, that kind of thing.
yeah,
But it's a beautiful, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because it's like it's got that summery vibe, it's got that lovely rolling groove, but also there's like an element of like tension building in it as well. So again, it's one of those Swiss Army knife records you'd be able to play almost anywhere and it would work
yeah,
really. Yeah,
yeah.
phenomenal. Great stuff. Amazing stuff. Estanisl, amazing. Thank you for bringing that in. One thing I wanted to double back on just before we went to the next track, I just wanted to talk about what you said relating to the last track and what we were talking about, taste. Again, like
Yeah,
your taste as the label and stuff. I want to just
yeah,
highlight a really important point because one of the things that I talk to people about the most when they're trying to get music signed is like how to deal with quote unquote rejection. And I think what you've just said in the context of like Jonas's record before is really important to get over to people, that what Chris said about Jonas's track like not being quite the taste that he's after for the label, that's not a rejection at all. That's just people making creative choices. So just because you get you put a track in to be considered by a label and they come back and say it's not quite what we're looking for or whatever, that's not a rejection. That's literally them saying like, this is what our taste is, this just doesn't quite align with our taste at this moment, and like there's nothing to be rejected over. Like, I mean, personally, my thing is that I actually don't even think the concept of rejection even exists. I think, honestly, you end up in a place where you're meant to based on being redirected by those people saying, yeah, really good, but not quite for me. Do you know what I mean? So this is what I mean, Chris, like about why I invited you on here. that's another little thing that I think's really important for people to hear. Is that, like, when you say things like, okay, yeah, it's great, but it's not quite my taste for the label, that doesn't reflect personally on the artist or anything that they're doing. It's just a simple creative choice based on your taste.
Yeah, completely. And I think the difficulty is, I think, is that when you're a producer and you're putting all your time and effort into it, it's so personal to you
Mm,
that when I hear it and it's just, I've got hundreds of demos coming through and it's just, well, it's not really my style. If it feels like rejection, doesn't it?
hmm
But you're right, it completely isn't at all. Um, and I guess that sort of comes back as well to when people are submitting demos. And I know this is a slightly different sort of forum, but when people are submitting demos, it's really, really important, whatever label you're sending it to, that you know about that label.
Yeah.
You know what they're releasing, what the last 5 or 6 releases have sounded like, or the artists on that label are sounding like, because it's just a waste of everyone's time if you're sending stuff that is completely not aligned with that sound, because you're never going to get signed at any label you send to, if you're not in their sound world. And so many people do it. It's yeah, it's a really important point when you're sending out demos.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I I don't want to see what the state of your inbox is like for the label, mate. To be honest.
Yeah, well, it's better than others, let's say that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had very, very similar experience with Chapter 24, to be honest with you. And we broke more than one intern making them go through all the demos, to be honest with you, because we were just getting that many. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to what you were saying, you're absolutely right. I think it's incredibly important that you are very mindful about what labels you send to and like when you send and that kind of thing, because 95% of what we were getting back in the chapter 24 days was just completely inappropriate to the label, you know.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating. It can be frustrating. It's frustrating for the label, it's frustrating for the artist, because it's like nothing's quite aligned and stuff like that. So it is, I think it's harder than actually making the music, if I'm being honest with you, getting the stuff signed, because it can take a long time. And sometimes you're waiting 6 months to a year for something to come out. And
Yeah.
you know, it's a really, really, it's difficult, even with the amount of labels that are out there and the amount of music getting made and everything. It's still very, very difficult to try and get on a good label that will actually as you do with Night Colours, like really work the record properly, get it into the right people's hands, and actually make a difference in people's careers. So
Yeah.
like again, like the advice to people is just be very, very mindful about who and where you send to. And I'm always a big advocate for, like, if you really want to get on a label, you've got to build a relationship with them over time. You've got to get to know the label managers, some of the other artists on the label, that kind of thing. And that can make all the difference on top of what you're saying as well.
I would say, to be honest, Paul, that's probably 98% the answer, because most of the stuff now that I would sign is coming from people I've got a relationship with beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
If you send a random demo to it, the chances of that getting signed are a lot slimmer,
Yeah,
than if you've been like, we built up a relationship over a period of weeks or months or whatever,
yeah,
or at the very least, you've got in contact at some point
yeah.
to say hello without hello, this is what I want.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And again, what's your Instagram inbox absolutely blow up after saying that in this session? Do you know what I mean? All of a sudden,
Yeah,
you're gonna have 50 new mates at the end of this session, mate. Do you know what I mean?
yeah,
No, but it's totally true, and it was exactly the same for me on Chapter 24. It was like we had a family of artists, and we were signing almost exclusively from that pool. And anyone else we signed were from like referrals from people who we'd already
yeah,
signed in the past, and we tried to grow a bit of a stable, if you will, like a bit of a bit of a family of artists around the label as well, like to build a bit of a culture. And a lot of the demos at email that you'll see for the record labels. Often, I used to call them rather unfortunate, I used to call them a sewage pipe for all the stuff that nobody wanted to listen to. Do you know what I mean? So it was like everybody that you didn't want to sign or were not interested in signing would put the SoundCloud into the demos at. And you know, it's an unfortunate reality that unless you're some sort of like, you know, real savant on the spectrum and you want to sit there and go through 500 demos a week and 495 of them are completely inappropriate, you know, to get to those 5 things that you might even consider, it's like the risk reward is too high, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it is a bit like message in a bottle type territory by going straight to the demos at email. And, you know, to be honest with you, my fix for that was I don't have one. I don't accept demos. The only tracks that we release on Emerging Properties are from the MYT members, so you've got to be part of the community to even get through the door, to be able to be good enough to be able to be considered, you know. And like we've got that much good music coming through that I'll be honest with you, we're signed up through 2026. Like we're you know, we've been like that. We filled the year out in like February. So you know, that's kind of, and I've had to basically like say to the community, if I offer to sign anything, don't believe me, because like there's too much. There's too much good music coming. So like I've got to kind of like discipline myself and say, no, don't say it, Paul. Don't say it. And on 1 or 2 occasions, I'm like, yeah, I'll put this out in February 2026. You know, that kind of stuff. Like, so I've just got to watch myself. But you know, but it's good. I think it's good to have that kind of discussion, mate, about the reality of what it's like to actually run a label, because then for people actually putting the demos in, it actually means they've got a much better understanding of how it works and why it might not work for any number. There's any number of different reasons why people won't take a record. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And like absolutely none of them are to do with the artist or whether they're good enough. It's all to do with many, many other factors that are completely outside of people's control. So yeah, I think it's good in a session like this to have that as a reminder. Right, we're going to move on. Matt Black. We're going to listen to this. Redemption Arc. Here we go. That in the trade is what we call a trancy squelcher.
It's perfecto, isn't it?
It really, really is. Like, it's proper old school perfecto, isn't it? Like, in a good way.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah, it's definitely that sort of Paul Oakenfold style. Yeah, cream courtyard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That
Our particular vintage, that mate, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
that is yeah, yeah. Again, it's Matt. It's not something that is really within the sort of night colours
hmm
sort of palette, really. But having said that, it's really nice. I think going back to what we said for a couple of the other tracks, I think maybe a little bit more of variation, sort of variation in some of the like little riffs,
hmm
motifs would work wonders.
Yeah.
Um, Especially after the break as well. Um, because you've potentially got a really good track here because it's got really the sound, as I said, that saying it's that perfecto thing isn't a slight at all. I mean,
No, not at all.
that's a compliment, if anything. It's got some really good melodic elements in it. I just think a little bit more variation,
Yeah.
and it might give it that little bit more emotion. Yeah, and I think it's a winner then.
Yeah, totally, totally. I think there's like this is not the word I would use. I think there's an element of like aggression that needs to be taken in the approach where
Yeah,
it goes a bit
definitely.
more balls to the wall. And I agree
Yeah,
with you on the variation, and it's not just in terms of the actual notes, adding the extra little note here or there, like you were saying before, with like say Jonas's track. It's also in the automation. It'd be really nice if you get sections where like the filters and the envelopes open right up, and you almost do like this peak moment, and then you pull it back, and you sort of create that element of drama within the context of the groove and everything else as it grooves along really nicely. And for me as well, I think the drums also as well could do with some variation because there's this sort of whole section around here, for example, where the kick kind of comes out. And I'll be honest with you, I was like filling in the gap with a breakbeat.
yeah,
Like there's a section there where you could do something really interesting that people aren't expecting, where you can flip it into a breakbeat in part of that section where the rest of the drums are going, and it could be as simple as just varying up the kick pattern. Like you might not need to do anything else more than that, and the whole thing kind of grooves really, really nicely then. And then the other thing I was thinking about is the strings are really nice, those sort of synth pad strings that add the emotion, really nice. But I think again, like you were saying before, Chris, with some of the other tracks, they could be foreshadowed and kind of introduced a little bit earlier
yeah,
rather than like coming in at like that particular moment and not being sort of telegraphed, if you will. I think a little bit more of
yeah,
a gradual introduction would work really, really well. And just those three things alone that we've mentioned, and I'm hearing like another big open hi-hat. I'm hearing rides 909 rides on the eighths, like when you flip back, because as you probably know when you've heard tracks do this before, like a recent example, a fantastic example is the Sasha and Marsh track, Dead Synthy, where it just comes out of nowhere into a breakbeat, and then like there's a big break, a big build, and then the drops back into 4/4. So the contrast between the break section, the build, and the drop in 4/4 can be quite powerful. Then you can
yeah,
lean into that with extra percussion, big open hi-hats, rides, and really go for it. Do you know what I mean? And really lean into I don't know, the perfecto-ness of it all. But at the same time, throw a few curveballs that people aren't expecting to get them on the toes.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because I think there's a way of like doing this type of sound that would introduce some other elements that would actually like um put it in a different context, which then makes it really interesting. Do you know what I mean? And make sort of puts a bit of a 2025 slant on it, if you will. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a
Yeah,
few little
definitely.
tricks there to be able to do it, but feedback in the comments is wild. Everyone's like, finally a bit of trance. Very good. Right, we've got two to go, so I won't go on another 15-minute rant about mono compatibility and mastering. Promise. Right, we're going to get Benjamin. This is our final MYT member, and this is a lovely track of his, so here we go. There you go. There's Seize the Day by Benjamin. Very
I
nice, isn't
wasn't.
it?
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting what happened in the break actually when it came in. It was like, whoa, this is nice.
Mm.
Um, could it have gone after that break though? Could it have gone back to like darkness?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you know what I
possibly.
mean?
And then maybe back to
Rather
the
than
light right at the end or something, like a little
yeah,
frisson, that type of
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Um, but yeah, really good, really good. I mean, I have to say, most of me is thinking there's a fighting in my mind saying I don't like that vocal, but actually it worked really well and I really liked it.
Oh, you want to file that one as a guilty pleasure, do you, Chris?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, yeah, I did. I just it went really well with the melodics. It went beautifully. It was
Yeah,
really good.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because it starts out like this real like RP rumbly sort of like dark thing, and then
yeah,
when the light comes in and the vocals come in, it just turns on a
yeah.
fivepence, and it actually really works. Like in terms of the
It does.
transition. I mean, for me, like there's a couple of things because obviously this is not the first time I've heard this, but there's a couple of things I would say to Benjamin on this one is like again it's foreshadowing, isn't it? Even if it's just a reverse reverb of like a section of the vocal that just sucks it into the breakdown, so it's not completely like and here's the it's like somebody
Yeah,
crossfaded it into like another record essentially. Do you know what I
yeah, yeah,
mean? And then in the break I'll be honest, I kind of found the ARP, because the ARP carries on, doesn't it? That ARP bass.
yeah,
It kind of carries on, and I found it a little bit distracting. And either that ARP bass can be rolled off almost to like make it a sub, or what I would do in that section is maybe take it out and replace it with like a held sub that goes through like a bit of a chord progression, like a sub progression that kind of like
yeah.
underscores the vocal and it smooths out the break. It allows all the really beautiful musical stuff to really come through and really let it breathe and, let the vocal really catch. And then the drop, and like you're saying, like, yeah, you could go back into a little bit of darkness and then slowly but surely reintroduce all the lovely sort of lighter
Yeah.
parts if you want as well. Do you know what I mean? But I've always felt like, because like Benjamin's got like a really like specific sound. Like he's a bit of an Aussie bush duff raver, if you know what I mean. Like he loves stuff like Rainbow Serpent and like that's his jam,
Okay.
basically. You know what I mean? So like it's very much in line with that kind of sound for that kind of scene, if you know what I mean. And I've
Right.
always thought
Okay.
there's a huge amount of potential for him in that kind of scene because, like, again, like if you listen to a lot of that stuff, it tends to be like it almost sounds like if progressive house is doing very, very beautiful tribute to certain elements of psytrance.
Right.
Do you know what I
Okay.
mean? But it's like
Yeah.
slower and it's still got a lot of the same elements, if you know what I mean. So it's an interesting little sort of almost like subgenre within prog in a weird way. But like just again with these like little touches and stuff, and again letting the vocal breathe and that kind of thing, and let it to sort of, because I think with the bass coming down a little bit, it let the vocal become like the center of attention a little bit more. I think
Yeah.
that's the main
Yeah.
thing. But no, it's really, really good, mate. It's really good,
Yeah.
and
It's
and
nice.
and
Very nice.
it's not we've extracted the guilty pleasure out of you tonight, so my work here is done. Absolutely fun, absolutely brilliant. Right, okay, last one. Chris is like, thank God. Needed the Wii for 3 hours. Right, this is, I don't know who's put this in, but it's called Keep Calling. So we'll figure out who it is and we'll get back to you. Here we go. Let me just change the audio over, and here we go. I think we've gone to the other end of the spectrum here, Chris. I think we've gone from these are too long to this one's too short.
Well, yeah, I would say that because it still feels like it's got a little bit left to say, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really, really does. I mean, whether or not, because there's a bit of a fade out there, so whether or not
Yeah.
this person's kind of faded things out for just sort of feedback reasons or whatever, or just for sharing reasons on a live stream, I don't know. But it's like, I often say, like, there's a really good 6-minute record fighting to get out of this 9-minute one. I'm now saying that this is a really good 6-minute record that's fighting to get out of this 4.5-minute one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's really good. It's like a little bit like the record from, was it Estanisl?
Mm-hmm.
It's it's really good at what it does in its own particular niche. To me, it reminds me of something like Bonobo style thing.
That's
I think
so weird. I was thinking the exact same thing.
you could elevate this, maybe some, slightly different perks or something, or like some kind of vocal in some way, maybe after the drop. And I think then it takes on that kind of life. It feels more like almost like a live track or the potential to be a live track than a club track.
Yeah. The other, when you say that now, I've almost got vibes of like Chiasmos.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? That kind of area, like very much on the more chilled end of like Anjuna Deep. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
definitely.
that type of thing. Yeah, very, very cool. On the technical front, what I'd say is I think the shakers are too loud. And with this type of production, you need a very, very delicate, very subtle approach because it's all about, again, it's about the dynamics. It's about those subtle little textures and that little bit of ear candy, almost like, ASMR type sort of thing. And the low end's too heavy. It's actually, you can hear it like, and again, it might be because it's an MP3. And, this is why I only really accept WAVs, if I'm being honest with you, with these sessions. I didn't realise this was an MP3 until we started listening to it. The low end's very compressed. So it might be to do with the MP3 compression, but it's heavy in the mix and the kick is a little bit too heavy and you can almost hear a bit of compression on that as well. So again, it's like what I would do is I would take the bass line down by at least 3 dB and I'd take the kick down by probably 2 to 3 dB as well to just let it breathe a little bit more. Bring the shakers down quite substantially because they're taking up a lot of space in the mix in general. And then all the other beautiful things like the little kalimba type sounds and stuff like that get to start breathing and start becoming the star of the show a little bit more. So just from a mixing and technical perspective, it just needs that little bit more of a lightness of touch. Because again, like you said, it's more. It can be like that hybrid between something you hear played live by somebody like a Bonobo, and it's still got like that real energy in the low end, but it's not a club record. Do you know what I mean? It's something slightly different. It can work in a club, but it's something slightly different and slightly more live sounding. So reference points: Bonobo, Chiasmos, Lycosaurus. These types of artists, like again, that end of Anjuna Deep will really, really help with this type of thing. And we've got a couple of great artists making stuff like this in the community. One of them, Martin Rothamel, is just an absolute, he's a star waiting to happen. And, this is in a similar kind of ballpark, so we know what it takes in terms of like getting it into that right ballpark, so to speak. But it's a beautiful record, and like we both said, it feels like it's kind of got another minute and a half in it in order to kind of like really round it off and have a proper crescendo and a real outro. So again, from that sort of creative perspective, it would be something to bear in mind as well.
Yeah,
So
brilliant. But
great
great
stuff.
effort. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's really good. And I tell you what else has been really good, mate. This session, thank you very much for your time. It's been brilliant.
Yeah, it's been really enjoyable. The tracks have been, to be honest, all the tracks have been great. It's been really good to listen to them, and it's been really good. Thanks for having me on.
No, you're very welcome, mate. You're very welcome. And we'll definitely do this in future. And honestly, like, it's nice to spend a couple of hours with you, to be honest with you, because we don't get to see each other anywhere near as much as we'd like.
No, yeah, it's nice. Yeah, very
Yeah.
good.
But you know, I did move to the other side of the world, so it's probably on me.
Well, that is true. So
Well,
you left me.
well, oh, we had to put that one in there, didn't he? Towards the end, had to put that dagger into my heart. But I'm back. I'm back in a week and a bit, so don't worry. Don't worry. I'll be back in easy reach. So yeah, thanks very much. It's been a great session, and again, like thanks very much for your perspective. You know, like we don't get this very often. You know, we often get a lot of artist perspectives, but then not from people who are like actively running labels. So I think it's going to be
Yeah,
really, really useful for people. So yeah, brilliant,
great.
absolutely brilliant. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Next month we are on the 29th of May, and our special guest that we will be having on here for the feedback is going to be Luca Abayan, who has released a lot on the likes of Mango Alley, real emerging Argentinian talent from Rosario, jiu-jitsu guru as well, and knocking out some fantastic remixes at the moment and getting a lot of support from the likes of Nick, Warren, Hanan, doing really, really cool stuff. So yeah, he's going to be here to dispense his opinions. And like I say, in future, we've got amazing guests coming, like Weird Sounding Dude. We've got Subandrio coming in the future and a whole lot more besides. So basically, last Thursday of every month, 7 o'clock on ADSR, on Magnetic Magazine, on the MYT channel. And again, just to finally announce, we've got a brand new partner for these streams in Medtronica. So if you haven't checked out Medtronica on Instagram, it's a fantastic account run by my very good friend Ryan, and it is a mental health platform for electronic music artists. And me and Ryan both agree that getting feedback like this can be a real help to artists' mental health, especially when you feel like you're banging your head against the wall. So it's a great fit to have them be a partner on the stream, as well as Magnetic and ADSR. So yeah, thanks very much. See you guys soon. And the next one, I'll be back in England. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. Thanks, guys. See you soon.